We are committed to creating a safe and supportive space for our guests and listeners, and to provide information and tools that will help our listeners understand, manage, and overcome trauma. We understand that the healing journey can bring up challenging emotions. Therefore, we want to warn our audience that certain episodes may contain discussions or stories that could be triggering for some individuals. The content of the podcast is for educational and informative purposes only, and we encourage you to practice self-care and discretion while listening, and to reach out to a trusted support system or professional if you feel overwhelmed and need help on your healing journey. So hello, everybody. Welcome back to Healing and Growing Hand in Hand podcast. We're back, and we're going to talk about failure and success. Redefining. That's the word I missed. Redefining failure and success. I was just going to say failure and success, but I like redefining better.
Yeah, because we can fail and we can succeed, but a lot of times the way we define it, that's where the tricky piece is.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the part that takes it to the negative. Exactly.
Yeah. I wanted to touch I don't want to say as always or as usual, but on definitions. So definition of, because as if we talk about redefining it as well. So success is the accomplishment of an aim or purpose. So pretty much you did or accomplished whatever was the goal, or the good or bad outcome of an undertaking.
Say that again.
Actually,
that last
second
one.
The good or bad outcome of an undertaking.
The good or bad. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be positive. Interesting. Okay.
And that's also where perception probably going to come in.
Right.
Of what's good, what's bad.
Right.
And the failure, lack of success. That's the first one. And second one is the neglect or omission of expected or required action.
That is...
We might not even need to redefine it.
Seriously. We have to redefine how we think about it, because I wish I would have looked that up before. I didn't, though. I like to go into these a lot of times a little bit unprepared to be, surprised. And I'm thoroughly surprised.
This is as prepared as I am.
Yeah. I mean, because I define success as you did what you tried and you accomplished it. That's how I define success. And this is saying, even if I didn't, I think it's what it's saying is because I tried, it was successful. That's almost how it sounds to me.
The good or bad outcome of an undertaking.
Right. And then failure. And that's been a big one for me, because I remember learning about, I believe her name is Sarah Blakely. I usually slaughter names, who created. Yeah. So, I love what she shares about her family growing up, and they sat around the dinner table and each sibling would say how their day went and it was good or bad. And the father would actually be disappointed if they didn't have some failure, because to him, it meant they didn't try. And so he wouldn't be disappointed if they tried something and failed. He actually rewarded them. And that is that was a mind bender for me. And I shared that with my son and I said, dang, I wish I would have done that with you. I wish I would have thought that way when I was raising him. Because that just gives a totally different dynamic.
And I think the best thing about this, so first definition of failure, it's lack of success. Okay, lack of success. Success is something that we can, a lot of times perception comes in where it's what is success? What is, if we go kind of at the individual level. But the second one is that neglect or omission of expected or required action. So it's literally something that I learned over time, because this is not the way I look at failure at all. But now I look at failure more so if I don't try or if I give up, that's actually the failure. It's not me trying and failing or not meeting whatever was the initial goal, but it's actually not doing anything at all.
Yes.
Or giving up or not even trying or trying to pursue.
Right. Because it's okay to try and it not to go forward or not to go through.
Or is it? Was there a time that you thought that it's not okay?
I'm saying that. I'm not saying I'm living it. I'm not living that 100%. I'm just saying, truly, that's where I want to get. I want to get to a point where, because failure became my identity, right? So if I failed, it just further solidified that belief in myself that I was a failure. period, is what I was thinking. And so that was just in my mind evidence of truth.
Mm. So for you to be a failure, how did you get to, even like, I don't even know if how did you get to that, but how did that affect you taking action?
Well, I certainly didn't take all the action for sure in my life or the steps that I needed to. That's a really good question. I know that it stopped me. The failures in my life, that I'll call failures in my life, the way I perceived them, definitely stopped
Hmm.
me from taking another step, because there's another component to it. For me, failure meant shame. Failure meant the abusers in
Judgment.
my life to have just a heyday with my emotions and with me. And so not only did I spend time being hard on myself about the failure that I did, but I had others reminding me what a failure I was. And it was such a negative experience. And I think that I'm sure that's true with so many people who've been raised in an abusive situation, that when you make a mistake or you fail at something, it's an opportunity for them to further abuse you. So it goes really, really deep. And that's why for me, it took such a long time. I mean, I really felt like I was a failure. I felt full on like a failure. And,
I, I think I came up with your definition of failure
okay.
because as you were talking, I was thinking also because I had so many similar experiences and um, conclusions, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I wrote down that, well, it might or might not be yours. I think it for a big part, it might have been mine. Definition of failure was not being what you're supposed to be,
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. There was definitely,
what you're expected to
and
be.
here's the thing, there was moving expectations of me. And moving meaning I would have expectations given to me of this today, but then tomorrow they could be something different. And so that's now I understand. I think about that, why I always felt like a failure. Because here I thought, okay, I'm going to do these steps because this is going to make me successful. And I start taking those steps. And then I got told, no, no, no. Now you have to take these other steps. So I just failed. You should have known that. You should have known that.
Yeah, especially without any guidance. So you have to figure it out. Where like it's unrealistic to expect that you will figure out all the steps before you have taken any step when you're doing something for the first time. And if that expectation is there, there's literally no way how you cannot be a failure.
Correct. I mean, if you do it right, you're lucky, right? And that's something I've been really kind of pondering on. And it's not to necessarily, pick on my parents or whatever, but it's a reality. It's my reality. And my parents, they taught me, but they taught me how not to do things, right? They didn't teach me how to do things properly. And there was always this expectation, and this may be true with others as well, that we were supposed to know that, and the truth was I was a child, and it's your job as a parent to teach me, and it's your job as a parent to guide me in the right direction and help me come up with the right decision. And I didn't have that, so I was on my own a lot. And so you could see where I didn't get direction. I would make a mistake, and then I would get criticized for it, and told you should have known that. And then after a while I'm like, yeah, I should have known. So then I went into my adult life like I should know everything.
Hmm.
Interesting, huh?
What do you think it's so important? What do you even think that like success and failure is so important? Because it literally seems like it's become such an important thing that we all focus on or even like ruminate on.
I think it becomes part of our
That
identity. I think we make it part of our identity, which is what we do with a lot of things. It becomes part of our identity. And so then it's hard to let it go. If I'm successful, everybody loves me, I'm great, I'm this, I'm that. If I fail, nobody will like me. It's negative, negative, negative. Success is positive and failure is negative, and that's not true. Because there's people we've seen in our life that have had success in their life and have made really bad choices in their life, right? So success doesn't always mean positive. It's what you do in that success. It's what you do in that failure.
And even like, what kind of success are we talking about? Because like that is one thing that we
Good
talked
question.
that we like. Good example that I can give is me failing 75 hard.
Right, right.
So
This is a great
I
story.
failed doing,
Yeah, great story.
yeah. So like anybody listening who doesn't know what 75 hard is, it's a program made by Andy Frisella where 75 days in a row you have to do these things. So you have to take progress picture, you have to stick to the diet, you choose a diet depending on your goals. You have to drink a gallon of water, you have to do two 45-minute workouts, minimum 45 minutes, and one has to be outdoors. And you have to have 3 hours between them. And then you have to read 10 pages a day. I think that's all of them. And it's nonfiction books or something towards self development. And so I was doing it and I was already on, I think I was on like day 22. And I have been doing well. And like for the majority of this year, actually, I have been doing it with the intention to have like 80% of the year finished 75 hard days. But that's when I was 22 days in, that's when I was like officially doing it, like all the way through. And I woke up on day 22. And as I was like thinking about something or just like reflecting back on the day or something, I got this thought come in my mind that day before when I went on a bike ride with dad, we actually finished earlier than usual. And usually I still walk for like few minutes to finish off because like we finish in like 40 something minutes. So I still need to have like 3 minutes of some kind of exercise to get to 45 minutes. But I realized that I didn't do it the day before. And I finished faster as well. So I kind of got so much into talking about how fast we finish. And I was also tracking the speed and we were like talking all that, that in my mind, and this was actually one day after I did half marathon as well. So like on top of it, half marathon wasn't the reason for me not to finish it or not to continue 75 hard and do those two workouts a day. I still did two workouts, but one of them was 7 minutes short. And I only realized it the next day. And the big part of the whole 75 hard is that if you miss any of the things, any of the tasks on any of the days, you start day one. So there was no way how I can go back to yesterday and fix it, because if I had known the day before, I would have done literally workout at, and I did it one day. I did workout at like midnight, was my second workout. Because throughout the day I failed to get to 45 minutes, I think 3 times. So I had just had to finish my both workouts starting 8 p.m. And so that's when I realized that I failed and there's literally no way how I can fix it at this point. Which, if I would have gone through that some years ago, and this is not my first time finishing it, or I'm about to finish it. I'm now like what day? I'm actually day 20. So I'm literally like technically I should be at day 40 something
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't have those 7 minutes. But I I identified it, and in my mind, because I'm like posting about this daily, my journey, I was like, nobody gonna know. I had this thought come up. Nobody gonna know. Just share it as if it's like done. Because it's not that big of a deal. It's 7 minutes, right? Like
Yeah.
I did everything, literally. And the big part of it was it wasn't by choice. I completely it just slipped my mind. I was convinced I finished both workouts because I did two workouts a day. It was just 7 minutes. Um, but then I was like, no, like I want to be a person of integrity, but also it's rules. So I had to follow the rules. And so when it comes to success versus failure, for me actually this time I didn't feel like I had failed at all, even though technically I failed and I had to start at one, but I didn't feel like a failure because first of all it wasn't by choice. I didn't intentionally choose not to do the workout because it was too hard or I felt like too lazy or I didn't feel like doing it or anything like that. It completely slipped my mind. And it doesn't mean that I'm not responsible for or I'm not owning it or I'm giving excuses. It's just what it's just what happened. But at the same time, I actually saw it as success because I was able to and I started over the next day. And I could have justified starting it over on Monday. I think I failed on, so like I had to start over on Tuesday. And the following Monday, I would start my half Ironman program, which is much more intense. It's like now I'm still doing 75 hard with that program, and it's literally like 75 hard on steroids. Like it's insane. Um, and I could have justified in my mind that let's just take these like 5-6 days off. I already have been training. I had like 2 half marathons in the last 3 weeks window while still doing 75 hard. And before that, I still did like a lot of training
Mm-hmm.
preparing for the half marathons. So in my mind, and I practically had no days off. I don't even think I had any days off. Like some days I would do walking, but there was no days without like any kind of exercise. And I was like, oh, I could just like take a few days off. That's what I would usually do. I would justify taking a few days off and just be like, I'm just gonna start on Monday. We're not gonna
Mm-hmm.
be back. And but I didn't do that. It didn't even cross my mind. I just started the next day, and I'm like, okay, today is day one, and I just go with it. And the the link to failure and success here is that yes, I failed, but at the same time it was a success, because before I would be falling off for weeks, or I would be like beating myself up, or I would now feel emotionally so bad throughout and there were some people who were asking me like, how do you feel? And I'm like, I'm good. Day one, I'm fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I actually looked at it as, now I have extra 22 days until I get to until I get to those 75 days to improve myself. So it's actually a win. Um, so and all of it is good example of shifting the way you see failure and success. Because even though I failed, I still saw it as a success because I have 22 extra days to work on myself.
Right.
And also, like, one thing that I can mention here with the failure or success is managing expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times when it comes to success, success, it can literally be you healing, you growing, you working on yourself, or becoming less triggered, or less feeling negative emotions, or feeling less depressed or anxious, or all this kind of stuff. um, if that's identified as success, or something that we're working towards as end result, you will have setbacks, you will have days when you're falling off,
Mm-hmm.
or things are not going the way you would want them to go. And it should even be expected, so that you're not thrown off when it happens. But at the same time, like, this is something that when I was doing my challenge, I made the slides about, because that's something people would ask me, like, how do I not lose focus? How do I stay disciplined and never lose discipline, or never lose focus? And surprise, surprise, you're gonna lose it. You will not always be depressed. You will not always be, not depressed, disciplined. You will not always be focused. You will get distracted. You will fall off. And that's fine. And what you should measure as a success is how quickly you get back on
Mm-hmm.
track.
And what you learned in this
Because,
situation too, right? What you learned in every failure, you should learn something.
yeah, because how can you measure success as a success?
So you have to find in that failure, you got to find that balance of feeling bad and what I need to change, and that's why I say it's important to focus on, and the way to kind of break out of that is focusing on, okay, wait a minute, there's something in this for me to learn. What is it I need to learn? Instead of focusing on, God, I'm such a failure, I can't believe I did that, and just going down that whole beat me up mode. And so balancing that failure reaction is really important too.
And also you can find a place to celebrate, because you're actually in the arena.
Right.
You're not sitting and thinking about it. You're
Right.
actually doing it. You're actually going through it. So all that discomfort and all that negative, even though you might feel like you're failing or you're failure in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
actually it is reflecting you showing up for yourself. You doing the work. You going through that uncomfortable path that is necessary to go to, that maybe online isn't as promoted as it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel
No.
good. And I'm still working through a lot of stuff, and there is a lot of, I don't want to say pain. It's like maybe emotions we might not prefer to feel,
Yeah.
or to go through as
Mm-hmm.
we're like leveling up, or
Mm-hmm.
just like working on ourselves, or even just seeing things that we might not want to see, or admitting things that we might not want to admit. And with each level that you achieve in your healing and growing, there are different kind of pain points that are coming with that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that now that you're at the level 20 that there will be no pain or anything at all. Like, you,
No.
well, one thing is that you will have grown yourself to level where you are more resilient, and you're able to, and also
Manage it
more
better.
aware to be able to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. um but it doesn't mean that it's not going
Right.
to be there. And that's it. It might sound negative or not something that you might want to
Yeah,
hear
it
or
sounds
look
kind of
forward to.
scary, but
Yeah, but trust me, it's just, first of all, it's so worth it. Like, it's so worth it. And you are definitely going to be in much better place to be able to deal with it, whatever it is that will be coming. But the only way how you can get to where you can deal with it is by going and
mhm.
failing and then trying again, and then you try different approach, and then you try again, and you fall on your face, and then you have to get back up, and then you just keep doing it all the time. And it feels like it's never going to end, which I actually feel like it actually might never end.
It just is not
But
as so intense all the time. And that's one thing I wanted to share with the listeners too, especially those that are, at the beginning of your healing stage. When this, like when a failure happens, what I remember what that felt like, and it's just so overwhelming and so consuming and feels like it's so much of you, it's all of you. And as you go through this healing journey and you have your successes and you have your failures and you learn to manage that pain, it's not as intense, first of all. When it happens, it's not always as intense, and it doesn't stay with you, because you will have tools that will help you to manage your emotions and manage your feelings and work through that, but also how to let that failure go and turn it into something like, what can I learn from this situation, and turn it into a more positive thing rather than failure. Because at the beginning, it I can remember, I can literally go back there and remember when I would fail, it would overwhelm me and shut me down for days, if not weeks, and it would
oh yeah.
consume my mind, and then and it's and then it would become me. That's who I would be. I was a failure. It's not that I failed, I was a failure, and it became so much a part of me. And so I just want to encourage listeners, if you're in that place, just keep focusing on your healing journey, and it will not stay so intense, and it will not overwhelm you anymore. Even if it overwhelms you for a minute, you will have the tools to be able to bring yourself back around, and it won't consume you for hours, days, weeks.
Yeah, and remember that as long as you do, you're not failing.
Correct. Even if it's a tiny
There's
step,
no,
tiny,
yeah,
it's forward.
it doesn't matter even how big is the step. Like that's the thing. Like it can be really small step that you feel like this is just ridiculous. Like, this is ridiculous. But it's a step. And that's where you are succeeding. And even like with, yeah, it's for me, it's interesting to look back at it, because I definitely was in such a similar mindset about the way I saw failure. And I wonder if you had similar kind of experiences where, actually, if I look back, I I would somehow feed or even like create that reality of being a failure or failing all the time, because I was so afraid of failing that I would literally end up doing nothing, and then I'm
Yes.
stuck
Yes.
because I'm not doing
Yeah.
anything. And also there's no motion. There's no
Correct.
nothing moving. And if there's nothing moving, I'm literally feeling stuck and I'm feeling
Just the
miserable. And I
thoughts.
just reinforce that sense of like I'm a failure or I'm not good enough,
Hmm.
and all this kind of stuff, because there's literally no movement. And
Hmm.
that's something that I have identified, that a lot of times when you start to take action, it's irrelevant of what kind of action in what kind of area, that movement itself makes you feel way less than you're like as if you're failing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because the lack of movement, and then the thoughts continuing to go through your mind, and then what goes in there is, but you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. You're just sitting here.
Oh, this is actually something that you just reminded me. That's something that I'm now going through, um where I understood, and this is something that I wrote. Do I have it here? I had this thought that I wrote about being distracted. Okay, so here it is. It was about, I wrote social media, but it might be like something else as well. Social media is designed to distract you from yourself. We all are distracted from ourselves. And when you're not, it feels so unfamiliar to be with yourself. So no wonder we struggle.
Yeah,
So with this, um, sometimes action can be used as distraction from yourself, but also if you take no action, now you have all this space, especially if you're in a negative mind space, all this space to sit and listen to all the shit
Yep. Yep.
that's
All
going
those thoughts
on.
that keep repeating and going
and
through and
and
torturing you.
it's feeding you so much that it makes you literally paralyzed,
Yeah.
and you're like, I just can't do anything,
Yep.
because if I do something, then this failure gonna happen and that failure gonna happen. And that's where I highly encourage, as scary as it might, and I know how scary it is. I have been living it, and still in many areas I'm living it. It is so scary to take that first action, especially when you, okay, here's another example. Half Ironman. So I'm currently preparing for half Ironman, and I have, I think, 76 days until it. My body is not in a place where I can finish that kind of feat. Not at all. I barely finished half marathon, which is the last piece of half Ironman. So with that, and also I have really, really small amount of, I literally have 2.5 months to be ready. That's it. Like that, I already signed up. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is that a lot of times when it comes to success and failure, or taking action towards moving towards success, we want to have this clarity, or um, be kind of know that I gonna succeed, that there's no way how I can fail. So a good example is my half Ironman. I have never done this before. This is the, it's literally like, sometimes I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, what
What was I thinking?
what why do I have to do this? Like, why can't I just add like another 6 months or something? No, I have to do 90 days. um so and all this stuff is happening in my mind, but at the same time, if I think about it, there's literally no way how I can fail. I'm already the most disciplined that I have been. I'm already the most disciplined that I have been with the training, and the diet as well. And it's even like, I was thinking about this the other day. I was on a walk and I was like, is this how everybody's feeling about eating? It's so easy. Like, I have no, and big part of it also is like, I've been doing a lot like 75 hard stuff for the majority of the year, and a lot of like emotional work as well. But like, I was on a walk and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this how everybody's feeling? No wonder they're like giving me all this advice of like, just eat healthy, you know. But I was like struggling with emotional eating, and I was like, I just can't do it. And yesterday I noticed that it's been weeks since I didn't even have like any big cravings, or if I would
Mm.
have anything, I would easily be like, no. But I know the reason for it. I have a goal that I'm focusing on. And I know that if I take any steps sideways, I'll, on the day, I will regret it, or
Yeah.
I will think about it and I'll be like, "Ah, I wish." And that's actually for me, that, I don't know if I would see it as a failure. It more so would be something to address and adjust. But even if I don't finish, I honestly, like right now, I don't think I can, like
Yeah.
in this state, I can't finish it. But I don't know if I can get in 2.5 months where I can actually finish it, and finish it within that time frame. I have 8.5 hours to finish it. So I'm actually like, I'm really unsure. Like,
Yeah.
and I deal with this on, I can't say I deal with this on daily, because I'm every day, similar to what I said, I'm not sitting and thinking about it. If that was the case, I would be
Yeah.
so stressed. But because I'm in movement, I have to do this, then I have to do this,
Hmm.
and then I also have to train,
You're
then I
still
have to do
taking
the diet
action.
and all this kind of, because I take action, I don't really focus as much on potential failure, even though it's still there. But it's more so like, I just focus on, and the reason why I'm saying this is that a lot of times when we set goals, or a lot of times when we go into even like the healing journey, we go into it at the beginning with, when will I succeed, kind of thought.
Yes.
It's like, how long will this take, or do I have a guarantee that I actually gonna succeed at this?
Hmm.
And with this example, I actually don't know. I have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
And I actually can fail. And I'm also documenting the whole thing. So if I fail, people who are following me, they're gonna see it
Yeah.
that I failed. Which again, speaking of success, for me that's a huge success, because some time ago I wouldn't have posted that I failed 70. I wouldn't even post that I'm doing it, because I was like, what if I fail? People are gonna see and people are gonna
Yeah.
judge, and I wouldn't even post that I'm doing it. Then if I failed, I wouldn't post that I failed. I would just disappear, ghost. She's gone.
Hmm.
um that, and I think I did it once. A few years ago. And then third, I wouldn't post about something that I literally have no idea if I can finish it. And sitting where I'm at right now, I know that I can't physically finish it. My body's not there yet. At least with that time frame, for sure. So with that, for me, that's actually a win. That's a success
Mm-hmm.
because I'm able to do all this compared to before, where I wouldn't even consider
Yeah.
signing up for it. Not even talking about this timeline. No way. But that for me is a success.
Yeah.
Even like you can restructure it where instead of focusing on me potentially failing it or not finishing it or being disqualified because I'm not fitting the time or like whatever else reason, I look at it as a success because I'm I'm taking a risk, I'm overcoming myself, and I'm already winning by actually taking the action towards getting
Yep.
there because I'm building
Exactly.
the strongest me.
Yep.
I'm getting so many realizations and
Yeah.
lessons from just going through the whole thing
Yep.
that I literally can't see how any of this, and again getting back to definition of failure, how any of this could be neglect or omission of expected or required action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As long as I take action today, I'm less worried about, I will just know that, okay, within 2.5 months, I can or I can't get it done. That's it. It doesn't mean that I'm success or failure. It's just that I will learn that, okay, well, it's like 3 months ish since I started like officially doing it. So within 3 months, I will learn that can I do it or I can't do it. It's not that if I can, I'm success, or if I can't, I'm a failure. I will just know that okay,
Mm-hmm.
is it possible or not possible for me, or maybe there's something that I didn't do, or maybe whatever. um but I will just get the information pretty much. It's less of a meaning that, oh, I'm this hard. It's, and another piece that I wanted to add that you also I think touched on, the importance of curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't curious in all this,
Yeah.
oof,
Yeah.
that would
And
be
you
painful.
switch judgment, right? Because that's where you were before, to curiosity. And and that's what I'm thinking. It's like, why in the world would you work this hard and you have this kind of discipline? Let's just say, okay, so you've done it all, you're at the race, you don't quite make it through. Okay, you don't make it through in the 8.5 hours. You finish it, but you don't finish it in the time, right? How can we define that as a failure when all that stuff that you did to prepare for this was really, that's where you're growing. That's where you're healing. That's where you're going to have your aha moments. It's not at the race. It's all the prepared.
Yeah.
So you're gonna do all this prep, and it is hard. I know it is because I'm kind of walking along with you and hearing it and seeing it. I know it's hard. I haven't lived it myself to that degree, but I understand it's really hard. And how can you go all the way to the end and then say, I failed? All that stuff that you learned,
So,
all that stuff that helped you grow, and your life is in a completely different place, and then we're just going to say you failed. And that's what we do.
and that's what we focus on.
Right.
That's the interesting piece is, I'm even curious to hear your thoughts. Like, why do you think we focus on that? Because that's something that it took me a while to even like learn that actually the most important piece is that process, or that even like now just enduring it and showing up for myself and learning all these lessons about myself,
Yeah.
and going through stuff where I'm preparing myself more for life and I'm
Yeah.
understanding myself deeper. And in many ways I'm proving myself wrong about many things that I thought
I
are
know,
true, but
right?
they might not be,
I love
you know.
that.
And so like there's so much that you can get just from that. Again, this is actually success. Me
Correct.
showing up every day doing the thing, like that's the success. It's not just finishing that, but why do we focus only on that success or failure versus showing up today, doing what I need to do, taking the action, or even like when it comes to healing, doing the necessary things that I need to do? Why doing is not enough? Why doing is not
Because
seen as
nobody sees
success
that.
per se?
Nobody else is seeing that, right?
Mm.
And so I can tell you my mindset and where it used to be is, if I prepared for this race and I did this race and I was successful, I have arrived.
Mm.
I have
I'm enough.
arrived. I am enough. I have value. Everybody will like me now. Everybody will respect me, which is so, but seriously, that was what my mindset was. And if I failed, again, I would be that person that I would dismiss all that work. But see, and I think about it, if you do all that work and you do all that growth, you are not going to get to the finish line and call yourself a failure. You're not. You're just not.
I already don't
Yeah,
see myself.
no, not at
I'm
all.
I think I'm less than 2 weeks in, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm winning.
Yeah,
Like,
totally, totally. Because you already are a different person than you were 2 weeks ago. Imagine what you're going to be when you're at that race.
and that's the best thing. I can't.
Yeah,
I
because
will
you
see it
have
when I
no
get
idea
there.
what's going to happen between now and then. And I've seen what's happened to you in the short amount of time, and I'm like, holy shit, look out. And so, and that's why we need to redefine our definition of what success and failure is. It's not success is good and failure is bad. That is not, it's not good and bad. It's not black and white.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it is that focus on the outcome and the meaning of
Right.
it.
The value, yeah, the
Because
meaning that we put to it. Yes, absolutely.
yeah, because like when you talked about what you would do, I was like, oh shit, you're one step ahead of me. Because for me, I wouldn't even sign up. Like, if I would see that there's a possibility of me failing, I wouldn't sign up. I wouldn't commit to it. No way. I would just find the reasons why I can't do it now, or it's just not possible for me. Like good example was
Yeah.
half marathon. For years, I believed I just can't do anything long distance, or this it's just not possible for me. I'm not a runner. I'm slow. All this kind of stuff. And also, I had on top of that, like some years ago, doctor tell me that I can't be running because of my back. All this kind of stuff, and like that would be, I would just focus on like what I can do. So I believe that this is not something that I can do. So if there's any potential thought or belief that I could fail, I wouldn't even
Yeah.
consider it.
Oh yeah. I'm not going to,
That's how
that's,
passive I was.
that was me too. There's no way I'm putting myself out there for people to make fun of me. Because for sure, that was going to be the thing. Everybody was going to make fun of me. Like I didn't even have the idea that somebody could come along and be supportive of me even failing. Like it's just a heyday for everybody to have fun making fun of me.
And you know what's a good thing? Good example. So I posted that I started over 75 hard, and there was a person who commented, "Thank you for showing that it's okay to start over,"
Mm, yeah.
because it is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that, okay, I don't want to say it doesn't mean you didn't fail, because I did fail, but it doesn't mean that I'm a failure, or
Correct.
that it's now a reason for me not to try again.
Right.
Or because if I don't try again, or I don't try again, in my eyes, in the situation where I was, if I don't try again next day, then for me that's a failure.
Right.
That's me failing, because again, I neglected the expected or required actions.
Yeah.
That's
You
and
made a choice.
that's where I feel like, yeah, and I feel like it's something that we give too much power to that. Okay, another good example with this. So if I give all this power to the outcome, do I finish or not finish? What actually gives me that result is what I do today, what I do tomorrow, what I do the next day. It's actually not the race day. It's what I do today.
Correct. The prep.
But we focus so much on that end result that instead of celebrating that I did show up today, I did the workout today, and I did the next day, and right now I'm focusing on sleep. So now I'm learning to celebrate sleeping because
And
a
me
lot of
texting
it is
you, go
like,
to bed.
yeah. Yeah, and then I'm like, I'm getting ready, I'm getting there.
I'm almost there.
Yeah. And like, and that's another thing, is that like there's different things that you can define as success, because for me, finishing workout but doing it, or like now, like working late where I'm not getting enough sleep, that's actually not necessarily a success, because that's kind of this diminishing my returns long term. So it's, you will change that definition of what's success and what's not success. But also, like, it is, for me, I think that's where I had the biggest shift, even like with seeing results, because that's what we a lot of times focus on, seeing results or getting results. I got results when I started to focus on today.
Yes. And just
It's as
getting
simple as
things
that.
done today that needs to get done today. And with the idea of how it is going to affect you in the future. And that's what I always talk about too, is forward thinking. And it's not always easy to do, but that is one thing that I've had to switch in my life, is trying to forward think and prepare. And that's what you're doing. You're preparing today for the race, and what you do today is going to help or hinder race day. And
And that's
this,
the only thing I can actually control.
right, exactly. It's the only thing that you can control. You can't control that race day yet, but you can control preparing for that race day. That is in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. And like another thing with this that you mentioned, I have it on my wall, that Your future is found in your daily routine.
It's true. It's true. And that's something that I've learned in my life is, I always thought my future was just so bad. I didn't see a good future, and I wanted to have a good future. And so I had to start thinking of what I wanted that future to look like. And that was hard because I didn't believe I could
Yeah.
have it. Right. So then I believed I could have it. So I started once I believed it, I started taking the steps necessary now to create that future. And I'm still doing that now. I'm my present is where it's at today because of what I did in the past. And it's far better
Mhm.
than I ever imagined. And I'm still thinking about the future. I'm still thinking how I can improve things and make things better. And so, do I make good choices every day? No, but I I will say, when I have the decision before me, is that going to help me? No. Okay. And so I know that there could be consequences for making that choice. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, and how would you that's like one question I wanted to ask you, like how does the definition of failure has changed for you over time?
Oh, tremendously. Because first of all, I don't consider myself a failure anymore. That was on the table. I full on was a failure in everything I did. So I don't think that way. That's huge. Um, I still, of course, my goal is not to fail, right? And it's still there. And when I do fail, there's still that, and there'll be a time that I might um, spend time with myself trying to figure it out. But it's not my identity anymore. It used to be my identity. It used to be part of my identity, not my whole identity, but it was definitely part of my identity.
Yeah, so it's not at that identity level
Mm-mm.
anymore.
No, it still
One thing that
bugs
I
me,
wrote
but
down.
but I am much better about, okay, so what could I have done different?
Yeah, like kind of owning it, or not being as emotionally attached to it.
Yeah, it doesn't define my day. It used to define my
Mm,
day. If I did something failure, it defined my week sometimes. It doesn't define
not
me
longer.
anymore. And I can actually talk about it, where before it would be, oh God, don't say anything to anybody. Don't
Oh
say
yeah.
anything to anybody. Oh my God.
Okay, so this is really really good. Because that was the second question I wanted to ask as a follow up. At emotional level, how does that failure, or even like when you think about how you feel about failure or how you perceive it at the emotional level, how does that change? Because like I know that even what you just mentioned about the shame attached to it, for me it was paralyzing.
Oh yeah. Oh
That's why a lot of times I didn't do anything.
yeah.
And like that's good example is competing. So
Oh
like
yeah.
if I would have to play basketball like one on one or something, and I would think that there's any possibility, and I was good at it. If there was any possibility of me potentially losing, I just wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't even go as far as
There was
to
so much
do a
shame.
one-on-one basketball with someone else. I would not do that. I would not compete with someone else.
Well, that's why I said I
Yeah.
wouldn't do it. Like if somebody
Mm-mm.
was like, "Oh, let's play one on one," I'm like, "No, I can't because
Yeah. No,
instantly."
I've always competed with myself, but it used to be really unhealthy, right? So it was always that thing of spending a lot of time beating myself up over it, and so the question is, emotionally, how is it different for me? Um, it just goes back to, it doesn't consume me anymore. It used to consume me, and there would be so much shame and anger at myself and
Fear.
fear and pain and disgust. I would actually have disgust for myself. How could I fail? How could I do that? Why didn't I know that? I should have done this. I could, how I 100% took the failure on 100% my fault, even if there was evidence that it wasn't my fault. It would still somehow, I would twist it to make it my fault, and it would consume me. And all those emotions would come up, but I would not release the emotions. I would hold them inside. And I didn't tell anybody because I wasn't going to give that out and have somebody have fun with that, right? So now I talk about my failures and I laugh at myself.
What's the importance of humor in it?
You just don't take it so serious. It lightens it up. It doesn't become my identity. It just becomes of something silly I did or didn't do. It just becomes something of a learning lesson for me, and it's something that I can share with others, and hopefully they won't make that mistake.
I think big part of it, being able to laugh at yourself, definitely can show the measure of healing that has been done,
Oh
especially
yeah.
when it comes to shame.
Oh yeah, cuz again it was so shameful for me. I wouldn't even talk about it. And now I talk about it and I laugh about it. I'm not saying I
Yeah,
right away laugh about
same.
it. Sometimes it takes a little
Yeah.
time, but it's just not I used to look at people and be so confused by this, but they'd say, "Oh, just don't take yourself so serious." And I took myself very serious. Everything. I even had one time, I remembered this just recently. This is in my intense days. I walked into an elevator for work, and I just remember that day I did feel really intense. It was just an intense day. I don't know why. And this guy got on the elevator and he kept kind of looking over at me. He was a little uncomfortable, not creepy or anything, but he kept kind of looking over at me. Most people face forward when they're in an elevator. Um, and then he looked at me and said, "You're such a beautiful woman. Why don't you smile? You look so upset. You look so angry." And to that day, it sticks with me. And he was right, but I didn't even realize. But that's how deep it was within me.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware that I had it, that I would be like so afraid of. I think probably deep down I knew, but I didn't want to maybe admit or look at it because of shame
Oh, shame is
and
just,
uh,
ugh,
and fragile ego.
yeah.
And so I wasn't able to look at any of it, but like I had pretty much the same thing where like I would now, if I probably have done more in a week when it comes to taking action than I would do in like a year. Like
Yeah,
that's how
yeah.
uncomfortable I was with that potential situation or experience of failure. And it could be like anything. I just didn't like it. It literally could be so small. Like I just couldn't do anything that could kind of be seen as this is a failure, or you didn't do the right thing, or you didn't do like it perfectly or whatever. But for me it wasn't that I would try to be perfect. It was more so like I knew that I'm not, so I would just do whatever I can not to be caught
Yes,
that I'm
yes,
not perfect.
yes.
And a lot of it would be like avoidance. I would avoid doing anything or like being in social situations or like anything like that, um because then that would improve my chances of not being seen as failure. If nobody sees you, if you do nothing, then there's less kind of lower likelihood of you
Yeah,
being
nobody's
perceived as
going
a
to see you
failure.
being a failure if you're not doing anything, right? They're not seeing you failing, but in our lives we're failing if we're not taking steps. And and I wanted to say this because you and I talk a lot, and I talk a lot about taking baby steps, take baby steps. Baby steps can also include you may need to rest, like you were saying. Baby steps may mean that what, you don't need to go do that one thing today because you do need to do something else for yourself. You know, Baby steps doesn't always mean that you have to, you know, do something physical, that especially when you're feeling tired, we really need to listen to our bodies. We really need to listen to our bodies. But
And it's also how you redefine failure.
right, right. It really does, because when you do redefine it, because for a long time, I didn't take care of myself, right? And then when I started taking care of myself and doing things for myself, then there was a lot of guilt. And so I would go and
Hmm.
do the things, but there would be a ton of guilt. And now there's not guilt. There's not guilt. And if somebody doesn't, if I decide I want to go take a nap and somebody has a problem with that, that's their problem, not mine. you know,
Yeah,
I need to take care of myself. I didn't for so many years, and I am physically paying for it.
and it's actually a really good point, because like one of the clients that I'm working with, like she would say that she would literally be proud of not having had days off for
Yes.
potentially years.
That's her definition
And
of success.
exactly. And taking a day off or having a rest or prioritizing yourself or what you want to do in that moment, which might literally be just rest and do
Right.
nothing, could be perceived as a failure. And at the same time, it's like are you actually succeeding if you literally have no time for yourself, or doing things that you might want to do, because there's, and I know that big part of it is the culture that we're in, where like that is praised, you having no days
Yeah.
off, it's kind of like a badge that you can wear.
Yeah.
And I definitely have been in that place, and I'm still
Mm-hmm.
kind of recovering from being that person. At identity level, but it's something that I think that's one thing that I learned, that just like observing people that might be in a place that I would want to be mindset wise, or like just life wise, where they're resting and they still get it done, and it might be even necessary to rest to get it done better. That's where
Yes.
like I'm still learning this, but like for me, even like I think I'm still learning that the rest the rest piece, because because for me, like before I would be like, I have no time to do anything, I just have to be working.
Yeah.
So now like I'm prioritizing, even like with recovery, I'm now like this week I'm starting to work more on sleep, or even like with training, instead of always being like, oh, I can't be training or doing this workout because I have to be working. I don't do it. I can't say at all. It's more so as much as I would have done before, because
Mm-hmm.
then I would neglect the training altogether, and I would be like, I just need to be working. Um, so all that, it's like all those are measures of success, and taking like one step forward towards, again, whatever each of us are defining or perceiving as success, which also doesn't mean that if you see it as success that it's actually
Right.
success. So we want to be able to question our perceptions or our beliefs about what is success for
Mm-hmm.
us, and what actually is success, because that's something that I had a conversation with another client of mine about. Like he said that he wants to go after goals and build big stuff and all this kind of things, but at the same time he also wants to spend time with family, and be present, and just have evenings off where he can just be with his wife, and like they can go on a walk with their dog, and all this kind of stuff. So it's like, how can you know which, like, is the success that you're chasing or thinking that you need to chase, is that actually success that you authentically want?
Yeah.
And if you have been dragging that idea or that perception of that success for years, it might get outdated, where the more you get to know yourself, the more you can
Mm-hmm.
start to see like, what is it that I actually see as success,
Right.
like what is it that I actually want, or that I actually want to pursue, because it might not be what you thought it is initially.
The success that he had in his head could have been success that somebody else put in, that somebody else defined for him, which we do too, right?
Yeah.
We
Oh yeah.
define, we define, sometimes we take on the definitions of this stuff from what we learn from what other people say. And so that's why it's really important. I'm glad you read the definitions, because it's important to find out what do those words really, what does success and failure really mean? What are the definitions? Because we take on so
And it's
much
so
of what other
weird
people
how
tell
how
us.
precise they are.
Oh my goodness.
Those definitions are so
And
good.
not
I
at
thought
all
it
what I considered success and failure. Even though I've grown a
yeah.
lot, um, it's closer than what it used to be, my definitions of those, but it was not that.
Yeah, it's there's actually another thing that I wrote down that I wanted to discuss, because you said you mentioned something about failing, but like I wrote the question, like, what if we set the goal to fail, not to succeed, but to fail? Because the only way how you can succeed is if you go through failures enough times, and not going about them in a dumb way where you just like hit the wall and then you come back 5 minutes later, you hit the same wall again without having any adjustments. Not that way. But the only way how you can actually succeed is through failure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's as cliche as it is, and everybody talks about it, like fail forward and all this kind of stuff. But that's actually what it
It
is,
is. It's true.
Like, yeah, and something that I like that David Goggins said about failing. When I was at event listening him talking, I think that's where he said it. He was like, for me, failure is literally, it was just my first attempt. That's what it is. I tried something for the first time, I
Ooh,
fell. That was literally
I
just my first
like
attempt.
that. Failure was just my first attempt.
Yeah. And now you actually know where you stand.
Wow.
let's say with my half Ironman, this is just my first attempt, and by the time I will get to the, if I get to finish line, I don't know. And that's something that actually, like, some people would call me out on it. They're like, why would you think it, like, if you don't get it, like, it's, you shouldn't think that way. And I'm like, it's not that I'm focusing on it, I just know that it's a
And it's
possibility, like.
okay. And it's okay. It's
Yeah,
not gonna
yeah,
completely
it's,
rock my world.
I'm not like now focusing on like I will not finish out, like that's not what I'm doing. I'm like, that's a possibility, I can finish and I can't, and I don't know which one it is because I have never finished this before, so it can be either, and I actually haven't given myself that much time
Yeah.
to prepare for it.
Right.
So
Right.
especially with my background, where like my background isn't in endurance longer than like maybe 1 year, and even that year was broken up in many big places, so it hasn't even been like a full year. And and that's where like I need to learn like 3 sports in 3 months, so but it's something that i I think I just don't make it mean anything. And that's where like even that question, like what if you set the goal to fail. If you set the goal to fail, you just have to fail enough times until you succeed. That's what it is,
Right. Right. Right.
because like, okay, this is my first attempt. There's two options of what can happen, assuming, let's say, I don't finish it, or for whatever reason. um I don't think it might be my mindset though, but it's either my body breaking down, or or I get disqualified. But but that aside, let's say if I don't finish, there's two options. One is I make it mean that I'm a failure and not good enough, and all these things that I have been thinking about myself all these years, like, it's true.
Yeah.
See,
It's confirmation,
um,
right?
so now I use that as a reason to just give it up and not even try again, and just be like, okay, I'm gonna try something else. This is not working for me. I'm too slow, and I'll blah, 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 whatever story. Or the other option is like, okay, now first of all, I know how it feels to
Mm-hmm.
experience it, because there's so many things to kind of to experience there. Even transitioning between swim and bike, or bike and run, where there's like hundreds if not thousands of bikes, you need to find yours, and you need to somehow like change and
Mm-hmm.
all that while you're competing. And swimming, I have never swum with, I don't know how many, but plenty of
Oh
people
yeah. Out. Yeah.
that they don't care about you. They just want
Mm-mm.
to get there as
Mm-hmm.
fast as possible. I haven't done it, and that in itself, even thinking about it, I'm like, okay, that will be an interesting experience. But again, like, I can think about it and do nothing, or I can think about it and I'm like, okay, I just gotta know it on the day.
Right.
Like, I can't know
I'm aware of
now.
it. I have to be
And then I
aware.
will know how I gonna deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like that with so that's one thing. I will actually know how it feels, what's the experience, what it looks like, what are the nerves that you go through. And also I will know where I'm at this moment. So with either of distances or either the sports, like where I'm actually at, so that I can now look at it. I'm like, okay, this is where I'm at after the first attempt.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I can improve or work on
Right.
for the second
Right.
attempt.
Had you not
It
gone
doesn't
through
mean that
the
I'm a failure.
had you not gone through this race, you wouldn't know where you're at and how to prepare for the next
And I
one.
also would know where I am messing up the most,
Right.
because I can't know until I
Your
actually do it.
strengths and your
Like, I can
weaknesses.
now think and try to plan ahead, and I'm
Right.
like, oh, this is something. It's and I can't know until I actually go and do it. That's when I can know that, oh, I'm actually, like, I thought that I'm good at this, but I'm actually struggling at this, or this is something that I wouldn't even think of. Like, good example is nutrition.
Yeah.
Like, there's so many things that you need to keep in mind with, like, literally, like, being in movement, intense movement for like a many hours. um that how do you take care of nutrition?
Yeah.
There's like that to keep in mind as well. And I'm probably gonna, I can't say I'm gonna fail at it, but there will be some lessons there as well, because I'm not expert at any of this. I'm literally learning from YouTube right now. And and one follower who responded to me, and he's like giving me some advice. But like, that's pretty much where I'm at. But it's something that even like that path to success, I think that's another thing that a lot of times we think that we need to have. And I'm a good example with this, that we need to have this like perfect thing. Everything needs to be
Yeah.
planned out, and I need to have the perfect like structure and all this kind of stuff. I'm literally, and this is something I have done for a while now, especially recently, I'm figuring it out as I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you can actually figure out things the best. And this goes so well with that idea of failure, because if I now, like, I think that's something that I would give as an example about podcasting. If you now would sit and try to, even like from your experience, if you now would sit and before you started the podcast, how many things that have gone wrong or that you had to adjust or change have happened that you couldn't even
Oh
think
yeah,
of
so
just thinking
many.
about it ahead of time?
So many. So
There's
many.
so you literally, you can't think ahead of what can go wrong
Mm-mm.
until you are in it
I don't
and
have the
you're living it and
experience.
you're like, exactly. And only through experience you start to see that, oh, I need to change
Yeah,
this.
right.
Oh my gosh, this was not something that I
Yeah,
should have done. Okay, change, adapt, and move forward. But if you now try to predict all those things day one, especially if it's different when you have somebody guiding you or like a
right.
coach or something, it's different. But if you're trying it yourself and you
Mm-hmm.
try to predict from A to Z what will happen and even like what could potentially go wrong, you will be so wrong because you
Mm.
just don't know what you don't know. And the only way you can know is by actually being in the arena, doing the thing, and then you see like, okay, this is working, this is not working, this was like complete mess up. I thought this is gonna work, it didn't. Okay, move on, next.
Yeah.
And I think big important piece of this that has been helping me so much, similar to that idea of not taking it seriously, is learn to have fun in it.
Yeah, yes.
Learn to enjoy it.
Yeah. And be present in it because there's always things to learn and there's things you'll miss, you know?
Oh yeah.
There's definitely things to, and it goes back to the story's been on my podcast before where we talk about I don't know how to drive a car. So I'm going to read a book and I'm going to read how to drive a car. And I read the book and I know how to drive a car now, but I don't have the experience. So I have no idea what the emotions are like of driving down the road and having someone pull out in front of you. I've never experienced that before. So it's yeah, it's interesting. We can't
I think
expect
it's the same
ourselves to
with
know.
emotions.
Yeah.
It's the same with emotions. It's something that I have understood, especially now that I go through this, because there's so many emotions coming up, or there's so many kind
Yeah.
of resistance, especially if I'm like not haven't slept enough because I have like a lot of things that I need to do, or the workout was too late and all this kind of stuff. With that, like, I think I see more and more how, well, first of all, there's difference between like talking about it and living it and going through it. Even like with emotions, it's something that there's difference between talking about emotions or reading emotions and actually feeling them.
Yeah. Feeling them sucks.
Huge difference.
It can suck.
Yeah, especially, yeah, especially like in that moment. So like, for example, um if you would now come to me and you're giving me, well, you're not a good example because you're feeling them. If somebody would come to me and and kind of give me guidance on, um okay, 75 part is a good example. If somebody who has never done it would come and tell me that you should do this or you should do that, and I have finished it twice already, how much helpful it actually is, because a lot of it is coming from kind of from this. I don't want to say it to dismiss anything that can come your way as advice,
Yeah.
because there can be something that can be beneficial, but a lot of times somebody who hasn't been living it or hasn't gone
Hmm.
through it, there's a lot of things that they can't
Anticipate.
kind of anticipate, they can't think of them, they can't understand them because they just haven't been there yet. It's like they're talking at you when you're like one step higher in the arena, and this is what they see,
Right.
but they don't see what's on top of it, and they're talking from this. And and it's something that I think also as you go towards that, even like going through healing, which is really hard work, and not many people are doing it or are willing to do it, especially anything that's like emotion related work. It's not uncomfortable, it's not pleasant, it doesn't feel good, and you have to fail it. It's um and I think that's where it can be challenging to go through that, and even like have that, even like experience that the right people being around you to support you in that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's because it can at some point, and this is something that I also want to touch on with success slash failure. As you both healing and growing, or chasing whatever success, as you work on yourself and you get better and you see those results and people around you see those results, things will start to change.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing to maybe redefine with success, which is something that I've been learning over the past year and especially last few weeks, about redefining success in the sense that you think that, well, I'm not at the top, I'm on a climb. But even on the climb, you feel like you will have all the like support and all this and all that. You actually like, it's really lonely.
It
And it's
is.
something that I was thinking about the other day. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm here suffering pretty much every day. And I actually haven't experienced everybody, like anybody asking like, how are you?
Yeah.
How are you doing? And I don't need anybody now like
How
bombarding
are
me with these
you?
messages. But yeah, but like what I mean is that we all go through something and we all are kind of within our worlds. And that's why when it comes to going that path with growth and healing and improvement, it actually can feel really lonely,
Mm-hmm.
because another thing is that not many people are willing to walk that path with you.
Mm-hmm.
And because it is uncomfortable, it is unpleasant, and it takes a lot of facing and overcoming, which takes a lot of endurance and it's emotional toll as well. But it's something to keep in mind that it can feel lonely both in failure and success,
Yeah.
because with failure, even as you keep failing forward, not many people are I don't want to say people don't celebrate failure, because sometimes it makes them feel good about themselves, that you are failing, not them.
Yes.
When you
Yeah.
success, when you have some success, I think that's when people kind of can even give you more negativity,
Yeah.
because you showed them something that you haven't given up on yourself, on something that they might have given up on,
Yeah.
some of their dreams. So like, it's this topic is so interesting.
It is.
Like,
It is.
I, even now that I reflect, there's so many things that have changed. Even the way I don't see, here's a good thought, I don't even think I focus as much on success or failure anymore.
Oh, that's good. No, that's a good point. That's a really good point. That's a real,
Yeah,
yeah, that's not your focus, that, and that's a really good point, because I'm thinking about myself, and I agree. I focus a lot on the path to be successful, on what it takes
on
to,
the present.
right, on what it's going to take, the next step for me to get there, rather than
Yeah,
being there. That's a really good point. And I wanted to touch on emotions and feelings too, for those that are in the beginning of their healing stage. And I'll tell you, my thoughts used to be is, I don't want to feel pain. I don't want to feel anything
mm,
negative. I've had enough.
yeah, same.
I have had a lifetime of pain, and the last thing I want to do is feel pain. So that mindset kept me from feeling, right? That kept me from moving forward. And I was always afraid that, oh, if I start crying, I'll never stop. And none of that's true. These emotions and these feelings, the feelings is more, that's what really kind of gets us, is the feelings and the emotions. They will pass. They will pass. And it does get easier. But we do have to let those emotions and feelings out, holding them in and thinking that, well, if I just hold them in, then I don't have to deal with them. And that's not true.
And also, anything that anything that comes up, because a lot of times when you feel bad emotions, there's bad thoughts attached
Yes.
to it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of like a package
It
deal.
is. It really
um,
is.
and important thing there is not to get attached to those thoughts that are
Yeah,
coming up, and be aware that it's just those emotions kind of triggering some of the thoughts. It's kind of
correct.
like, it's just like automatic, because I know that for me that was a it was a huge thing. And I think that's also why I wanted to, it's not like you can avoid feeling negative emotions, especially when you're in that space at the beginning. It's kind of like your default
You're
is
right.
negative. um But like I know that I was afraid of, or I didn't want to feel them, because I know that like I would have these negative thoughts that would come up. So I would do anything to avoid feeling
Yeah.
bad, especially in the beginning when it comes to failure. Like if you, and that's where I think that even that definition of failure, it changes only over time as you do fail. Because then you start to see that, oh, failure doesn't define me. I can
Right.
still get up. I survived this. Then you fail again, you survive that, you fail again, you survive that. And then you start to see that, oh, it actually doesn't define me.
It's not my
Or the way I
identity.
see
Yeah, it's
myself.
not who I am,
Yeah.
because it would completely consume me. It's just like my anger that I used to deal with. And the only way I can describe it is it would consume every part of my body. My entire body became angry. Everything. And it's the same thing with the shame. I didn't
Yeah.
know,
I
I
think I
couldn't
had the
feel
same with
anything
fear and
else. Yeah,
shame.
I couldn't feel anything else. That's all I would feel. It would completely consume me. Completely consume me.
What What would you give listeners as any like practical tips or advice when it comes to redefining their success and failure?
What we were just talking about, and that is not to focus on that success, to focus more on what you're doing today. It's okay to have it like as a vision out there, right? You know it's
Yeah.
out there, and
Kind of
a
direction.
direction, and every once in a while you look at it, okay, that's where I'm headed. But where you need to focus on what is happening today, because there's so much in today that is going to take you to that success. And so that means focusing on what you need to do today, and that is what you focus on, and not focusing on my identity is based on whether I'm successful or not. And if I'm not successful, I'm useless. That's what he's thinking. Why am I here? If I'm successful, oh, I finally arrived. I'm equal with everybody else. If I hit success, I'm equal with everyone else. If I hit failure, so focus on today and just taking those baby steps, whatever they are. If it's resting, if it's eating right, if it's getting out and taking a walk, if it's whatever it is, finally making that tough decision that you've been putting off. And I know that what you'll notice too is as you start actually making those decisions and actually following through and taking those movements, your confidence is going to start to build, and it's going to get, each step after that gets easier. Because right now, when you're in that place of it's so overwhelming, it's so big, it's so hard, and you think, oh God, it's always going to be like this. It's always going to be this hard. Every time I take a step, it's going to be this big thing. It's not. With each one that you take, it does get easier. And sometimes you'll get to a place where you're like, well, okay, this is pretty easy. Then all of a sudden it gets hard again. That's okay. That's going to happen.
Or you might fall off, and then when you get out back, you're like, oh, I thought it was easier. It felt easier
It felt
before,
easier this
which is
time.
fine. Like, and that's a good practice. Like, I'm not saying you intentionally have to fall off, but you will fall
You will.
off at some point. And whenever you fall off, like that's your practice to get back on. Because then if, and that's something that I had so many limiting beliefs about this, even like about getting in shape. So like first time I'd finished 75 hard, I had gym. So then gyms closed, COVID,
Oh,
all this
yeah.
kind of stuff. I gained all the weight back because I was like, I can't train without gym. It's not possible. It's not possible for me to like, I believe that. Like, um, it's not possible for me to get in shape if there's no gym. And then the second 75 hard, I got in my best shape, where I was literally doing personal best in gym with 6 kilo dumbbells, which is like 13 pounds, I think. Um, and so that challenged that belief.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the thing, like with each failure, because like for me, falling back to, I don't know, being out of shape, that was a failure. Or
Oh,
was it? Because then if that didn't happen, that I wouldn't have been able to prove myself that I can have the same result, if not better result, with something that I believe that I actually can't do it without gym. So then the next thing was, even like now with running, I was like, I can't run, I'm out of shape. I literally was waiting for people to tell me like, don't you think you're too fat to do this? Like, that's literally, I was afraid that people were gonna tell me that, because I was proper out of shape. I still kind of am, but much stronger. But it's something that I had that belief. I was literally just waiting for somebody to call me out on that. I'm like, why is nobody telling that? I know everybody's thinking it. I know it. And when I actually ask people about it, they're like, no, that's not what I was thinking. I would think like, oh, I wouldn't be able to do that, or I would never even consider it. She's probably going to be busier or something like that. And I'm like, what? Um, so that for me was a challenge, was an opportunity to challenge
Mm-hmm.
that and overcome that and prove myself that, oh, okay, that's actually not. And yeah, it's, I think that even like what you said about the baby steps, that's something that I just can't emphasize it enough how important it is. And one way how I describe it is, imagine that your goal is the peak of the mountain. So you don't get to the goal by just, or to the peak by just staring at it
Right.
and just looking at it. And you start to take steps towards it. But as you take steps, it's not like you walk, you take steps and you look at it. You actually have to look at the step that you need to take
Right.
to make sure you don't fall down.
Right.
So that's what you do. Like as you're taking those steps, you are getting closer, and once in a while you want to look up
Yep.
so that you know that you're actually taking the steps in the right
Right.
direction. But that's as much as you look at it.
Right.
You just keep taking those steps, and those steps are the ones that are actually going to take you to the peak.
Right.
And taking that step, that's actually the success.
Correct.
What the peak is just the outcome.
It's your goal. It's
Yeah,
your end
it's
goal.
it's just the outcome of taking the
Right.
steps. So the success
It's the
actually is taking the
results.
step, because that's what brings you that ultimate
Right.
success. But the success itself, that peak, it's literally just consequence of you taking
Your
steps.
baby steps.
It's not a thing in itself without you taking
Right.
those steps. You can't accomplish it
That
without
prep
taking the step.
is huge. That prep is huge. It's just like I was thinking about when you paint a room. You don't just walk in and just start painting it and then walk away. And the prep,
Oh, you don't?
no. The prep takes longer than actually painting. The prep is more
Yeah.
work than actually painting. But if you don't prep, it's going to show. The prep is vitally important, and you get so much more out of the prep than you do the end goal.
Yeah. So to summarize, what people listening can do to maybe redefine it is, first of all, don't focus as much on the end goal as what you need to do today,
Right.
or what are some of the steps that you can take today, and celebrate those as wins or successes if you do them or don't.
Right.
And I would even like encourage anybody to look at failure as a opportunity.
Right.
Opportunity to learn, opportunity to adapt, opportunity to learn something new about yourself, and even learn, how do I deal with failure?
Right.
Because there's no way you can avoid failure in this
Exactly. It's
life.
going to happen. And so you're right. It's learning how to manage it. And, I had to undo so much of my thinking from my childhood abuse to even get to the point where I could go, okay, now how can I look at this? Like I had to undo so many beliefs and thoughts that I had about myself before I could get to the point where I could go, okay, let's redefine that and understand it and be able to implement it in my life and not have the old records playing in my head.
And one thing that you can do is just every day write down the wins of the day.
Ooh, yeah. Even if it's just one.
Doesn't
And you know
matter.
what?
Yeah.
Getting out of bed is a win. Getting out of bed is a
Seeing,
win.
if you have sight, that's a win.
That's a win. Yeah, you're breathing.
Having a bed,
Having a
that's
bed
a win.
is a win. Yeah. Yeah, I even think about having a toothbrush and how much I appreciate my toothbrush.
Because then also another thing is that you train your mind not to focus on failures, and you focus more on successes.
That is definitely something that I had to do, because I was looking at everything negative. Yes, that is a really good point, that it does help you begin to look at things on the positive side, and not always. Our brains want to go to the negative. Our brain wants to find the problem. Our brain wants to have something to fix. And we got to
just
reel
fun.
it in. Yeah. Yeah.
Just have fun.
Just have fun.
Enjoy the journey. We all are in it together,
It's a journey until we take our last breath.
Exactly.
We can make it. Exactly. It's up to us how this journey is going to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
So is that another problem resolved?
Thank you for helping me solve yet another world problem here. I mean, we solve a lot of them. So, and I want to encourage our listeners to, to share this episode with those that you know of that are maybe struggling with. I mean, I think everybody at some point struggles with failure and success and how to kind of
Yeah, I
bring the
still do.
balance. I do. I mean, it's a balancing act. And so, yeah, I just encourage everyone to share it and subscribe, and to YouTube and Spotify, and where else am I? Apple Podcast,
Apple.
Amazon. I'm on iHeart.
And also share your stories.
Share your stories. Yeah, we want
Success,
stories.
failure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're good at this.